mitzvotav v'tzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so we're going to learn tonight in honor and in prayer that these fires subside and the winds subside. So we finished last week with we finished the book of Bereshit, we finished the book of Genesis, and we now begin the book. Who needs a Bible? 1, 2. We have 20.
3, 4.
Everyone, I guess.
Not a problem.
There's our veterinarian tonight.
I brought her fruit too. Here you go. Okay, so we now begin the second book of the
Oh, I'm sorry.
Torah.
Is it okay if I sit here?
It's okay if you sit wherever you want.
I'm just
I
a
want to get
guest.
kicked out.
I'm just a guest.
So the Torah is composed of 5 books: Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Devar. Excuse me. I was going to say Devarim. Bamidbar, which was actually my Torah portion, my Bamidbar portion. Devarim. These are mistranslated all the time. They are. They're mistranslated as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. In fact, it's so nice. I've got all these colors from your life. In fact, their actual names are Bereshit, which we've talked about in the beginning, right? Shemot does not mean Exodus, it means names. Vayikra does not mean Leviticus, it literally means and he called. Bamidbar does not mean numbers, it means in the wilderness. And Devarim does not mean Deuteronomy, it means words and things, which are the same word in Hebrew. Okay? So let's just start off with that. Now we're going to the second book of the Torah. The names that we learn of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, etc., are not accurate. So let's just go through these titles each and why they are what they are. The book of Shemot. We talked about Bereshit. We talked about it, what the word means, how it's not a real meaning, and we explored that word. Remember, we did that a number of weeks ago. Shemot starts off where it says, these are the names, okay? And Shemot is very much about names, but there's another hidden piece in that. One of the reasons that we are taught that the Hebrews had the merit to go through the Exodus is because they kept their Hebrew names, okay? They kept the rite of Brit Milah, of the circumcision. They kept the Hebrew name. And names are extremely important, okay? Your Hebrew name is the name. All cultures teach that they have a spiritual name, a sacred name. And that name is an understanding of your soul. So the traditional way of finding your children's names is the father's job. And while the mother is pregnant, the father is to go into the dream world and to ask the children, the child, in my case was children, what are your names? Okay, that's actually what you do. And that's true with many, many cultures, with indigenous cultures, native cultures, different parts of the world, all around the world. It doesn't matter if it's Africa or South America. It doesn't matter if it's Nepal. This is constant. So names are really, really important. We're doing that Jewish astrology workshop at some point, and when we do, one of the things that's really important to understand is your astrological understanding is also based upon your name. Literally, if you change your name, you're changing your stars. Okay, so names are really important. I tell the story all the time. My son Jonathan, when it was Jonathan, we assumed his Hebrew name we thought was Yonatan. And he was born, and I'd look at him, I'd say, Jonathan, and he'd laugh, and I'd say, Yonatan, and he'd go, and I go, Jonathan, huh? Yonatan. He couldn't stand. So after a few days on a lark, I said Yochanan, which is another version of Jonathan, but it's different. He would laugh. Yonatan? Yochanan. Okay, I guess your Hebrew name is Yochanan. Okay. It is the word, it is the names of our souls. So this book is going to really go into our name and understanding who we are as individuals and as a people. Okay. We are in this, and this is the book about the Exodus. That's what it's about. But it's very, very much about the authenticity of who we are as individuals and as a culture. Vayikra, which is termed Leviticus because it's about the Levites, is actually not the name. Vayikra means and he called. It's a double entendre. It is mostly written about the priests, the Kohanim, the priestly caste of the Hebrew people, of the Jews, in the time of the temple ultimately, but they're established this is all about the priestly responsibilities. It's a double entendre. It is and he called, meaning the priest called to God, and he called, meaning the people called to God, and he called, meaning God called to the people. So that's what that book is about. Bamidbar is in the wilderness. It's actually my Torah portion. My bar mitzvah was Bamidbar. First nine's Bamidbar. It's Schwartz used to say, or Shlomo Schwartz of blessed memory used to say that your bar mitzvah portion is a preface for your whole life. So mine was Bamidbar, and I'm in the wilderness of the Conejo Valley. Where there's sometimes it's hard to teach. So Bamidbar is about the journey of it. And then Devarim is words or things. It's a recapitulation of what happened in the first 4 books. Okay? That's what the Torah is. We're now entering the book of Shemot, and it begins off saying, these are the names of the people, of the children who came up to Egypt. And then there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. I think we talked about this the other day, I think in services. Do I remember this right? I feel like I talked about this recently. That Joseph, he had become very close with one Pharaoh. A different group rebelled and took over the kingdom. And that group wanted to then persecute the Jews because the Jews had been allies to that other Pharaoh. Okay? And so they start to persecute the Hebrews. And Hebrew is really the right term at this point, not Jew. Hebrew Ivrim literally means those who cross over, because they crossed over the Jordan River. Okay, they crossed over. So the Hebrews at this point are made into slaves. And if we look at chapter 1, verse 15, they were supposed to be killing people. And the king of the Egypt said to the Hebrew wives, of whom the names, the first was Shiphrah, the second was Puah. Reading it. When you deliver the Hebrew women, and you see them on the birth stool, if it's a son, you're to kill him. If it's a daughter, you shall live. But the midwives were in awe, it's not feared, were in awe of God, and they did not do as the king of Egypt spoke to them, and they caused the boy to live. Okay, we know what that was. Let's see.
Still the autofight.
Okay.
Updated one.
Ooh, it's on River Ridge Golf Course. My boys are going to be very upset. So it's what?
There's fire now.
Not
No,
that.
it's
It's
north
a
of
bit dark.
Oxnard.
So what ends up happening is that every Pharaoh says, if we look at verse 22, every son that will be born into the river shall you throw him, and every daughter shall you keep alive. So a boy is born, and we all know the story from whatever version we know it. His name is Moshe, and he was taken from the water. And Moses is placed into a basket, and the basket is washed by his sister Miriam and his mother Yocheved. And it's floated down, and Pharaoh's daughter, niece, ward, not really, she's a young female relative that he takes care of, sees the baby. She doesn't have a baby. She wants a baby. And Midrash actually says God made her arm get extra long and stretch out to get the baby, bring it back, but she couldn't nurse. So she immediately needed a nurse, and Yocheved happened to be there. So Yocheved was able to nurse her own baby, and Moses was brought up with the milk of the Hebrews, not of the Pharaoh idolaters. Moses becomes this great leader. He's a recalcitrant leader. He does not want the job, because why would you? It's a horrible job. But he really becomes this great leader by being a servant. There are a number of midrashim about it, that God sees Moses, and Moses is a shepherd, and he goes after a little sheep, and when he finds the sheep, he realizes the sheep is tired, so he puts the sheep on his back. And God realizes that's the one I want. He's ready. But there are a number of things. Now, we have this concept of his transcendent moment as he goes up. He's in the desert with Yitro, who's not a Hebrew. And he goes up into the mountain, and he has this experience. What does he see? What do we hear about? Well, do you guys remember what he sees when he goes up on the mountain the first time?
Is that the burning bush?
Okay. So what's that described as? The bush that burns but is not consumed. And he notices it. So we have lots of discussion. Was that the only time the burning bush was there? Or was the bush always there, always burning and not being consumed? It's just that Moses was the first person to realize it. I like the second midrash better. So as an example, all keep facing me for a moment. And how many chairs, without looking, are against that back wall?
6.
Just guessing, right?
Yeah.
Turn around, look. There's 2 against the back wall. There's 2 more on the stage, and then there's also 1 that's against the ark.
3.
So it's actually, there's 2 on the wall, 2 on the stage, and then that are against the wall, and a 5th. How many empty spots are there on the memorial board when you walk in? Most of us don't notice things, no matter how often we walk through them. Moses had the ability, and he did, and so he becomes a servant. Now, we have the written Torah, and we have the oral Torah. So one of the things is that in this written Torah, Moses says to God, "Don't send me." Why does he not want to be sent? Does anyone remember? He's slow of speech. Why is he slow of speech? The Midrash teaches us that Batya comes, Pharaoh's daughter. You know the story, that his niece, his ward, comes and she says, "Oh, great Pharaoh, daddy, uncle, I want you to, this is going to be my boy, and I'm going to raise him as royalty in Egypt." He doesn't want to say no to the girl. On the other hand, all his ministers are saying this boy is going to, we're taught that it's been in the stars. Another reason that we know astrology actually is effective. Okay? Although as Jews we supersede it, but that it is a legitimate system. But they say a Hebrew is going to overthrow you. So they devise a test, and they take 2 things: Pharaoh's signet ring, his golden ring, and glowing coals. And they put them like here. Glowing coals, hot coals. And so the idea is that whatever the baby goes to reach for, if he reaches for the coals, he's just stupid. If he reaches for the ring, he's going to take Pharaoh's place at some point. And the idea is that at that point, Moses starts to reach for the ring. The archangel Gabriel pushes his hand, and he picks up the glowing coals. And what does a baby do when they pick up anything?
Put it in their mouth.
As a result, Moses had a cleft palate. So he was not a speaker. That's why he needed Aaron as his speaking. You're going, I didn't know
I
that.
never learned that.
Okay.
Is that a midrash or?
No, the part about the glowing coals is oral Torah. It's midrash. The part about him not being able to speak and that Aaron will be his spokesperson is here. That's why he partners with Aaron. That's why God says Aaron will do your speaking for you.
But the fact that the coal created that
is the oral Torah. Okay, which is just as old. It's passed down from Joshua, and it's passed down. We're going to get Talmud. Moses. So let's look at the oral Torah for a minute, which is the basis of Talmud. God says, Moses, write down you should protect the Sabbath. Moses says, what does that mean? God says, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do that. Don't protect the Sabbath is written down. The don't do this, don't do that is orally transmitted from God to Moses, who transmits it to Joshua, who transmits it to the prophets. Ultimately, it gets down to the men of the Great Assembly in Judah. Anasi writes down the discussions about what that oral Torah is. So it's actually very, very, and we know oral traditions are actually more accurate than written traditions. Anthropologically, we actually know that. It's very interesting. So Moses has that. That's why he needs Aaron, because he can't speak. And he takes a staff, and the staff is going to be God's staff. And we all remember that scene from the movie The Ten Commandments.
Throws it down, becomes a snake.
Snows it down, becomes a snake. Pharaoh's sorcerers say that's no big deal. They throw down theirs, becomes snakes. Moses' snake eats their snakes. Okay. This is a more important teaching than we often realize. We always say, oh, it's a nice little story. Maybe it happened. Nice little story. But it's an important thing to understand that Judaism does not discount sorcery and magic. It does not say it does not exist. The exact opposite. The Bible is very clear it exists. It's just forbidden. Because what we do comes from God. Astrological readings, when we do the workshop, it will be the example that there's all this teachings about the stars, the moons, your names, but the bottom line teaching is none of it has to have anything to do or any effect on anyone. You can just deal with it with prayer straight to God. But it is one way of interpreting things. So this story of this one snake to the three snakes, it's very phantasmagoric, but it really is a teaching that Judaism doesn't. We're not Western culture. People think Jews are intellectual in Western culture. Well, we are intellectual, but we're not. We don't have the Protestant Western culture. Judaism is very clear. We accept that magic and sorcery exist. We just know we can trump it, that God trumps everything. We accept that people have experiences and God speaks to them. We accept those kind of things. And it's forbidden. Okay? And you don't have things that are forbidden that you don't think can happen. In other words, when it says you're forbidden from summoning the dead, what does that tell us automatically that we can do? Summon the dead. And we're forbidden from that. We can do what, though? Do you remember from Sukkot? We can invite the dead. Every Sukkot, during that holiday, we invite the dead to come into the Sukkah. We invite Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, and David to come into our Sukkah. Okay? But you can't, even though you have the ability to command them, we don't. So, but we don't deny that it exists. So Moses goes back and he does this, and we have the 10 plagues. Each of the plagues, who are the plagues for? Why do we need plagues?
I think it's for the Hebrews.
It's for the Hebrews.
For the what?
Hebrews. It says that God softens and hardens Pharaoh's heart. Why doesn't he just soften Pharaoh's heart? They can all go free. The answer is because the Hebrews had taken on Egyptian cosmology and beliefs. Whether they practiced them to whatever level or not, too many of them had actually taken it on. So the plagues are not for the Egyptians. The plagues are for the Hebrews. And if you look at the 10 plagues, every one of them corresponds to one of the 10 major gods of the Egyptian pantheon. The Nile, which is not even considered a plague, but the Nile, the sun, Osiris, Anubis, all this, it corresponds to each of them. Let's go to what happens with the Passover. Most of us know this story because we read it every year, right? We do Pesach. So they have this 10th plague, and the 10th plague, what happens? The firstborn is going to die, and that does happen, right? And God passes over the Jewish homes because we do what? With blood on the door.
Blood on the door.
Why? Remember I said this is all about learning to think like rabbis. You're welcome. So, God's all-knowing, right? Why does God need to have blood on a door to know that it's a Jewish home?
We
gonna
have
throw
to
something in
demonstrate it.
Again, it's to make Hebrews do something for some reason
Okay.
that is really not necessary, but it's the word of God and say, yeah, you.
Okay,
have
so
to
let's.
do
What's
it.
the reason? And what could be the reason that we would want to do that?
To be willing to show that you are.
To show that to make a statement. Because let's be clear, if the next day firstborn Egyptians had not died, what would have happened to every house that had blood on it? Right? It's not a statement because God needs it. It's a statement because man needs it. And this you're going to find throughout the Torah, throughout the Tanakh, throughout all of our teachings and our practices. God doesn't need me to say the Shema. Okay? God wants me to be good with each other. God doesn't need me to keep kosher. It doesn't make God more godly because I kept kosher. So why do we do it? These laws are for us. They're for humanity so that we become better versions of ourselves, so that we live in a way that's more conscious and awake and aware. They've had 9 plagues. Now it's a real simple statement. You've seen everything from the sun being blotted out to ice and hail to animals dying and lice and all these horrible things, right? Most saying, look, we're going to have every firstborn in a house is going to die unless you put blood on the doorpost. Now think about the dialogue, right? If the 6 of us are sitting here, right? We're having luncheon, okay? We're having luncheon, and you know, Ed says, Rabbi, you heard this guy Moses is saying, the guy who was making all these plagues happen with God. I don't know what he's saying. He said, well, he said that we all got to put blood on our door, or our firstborn are going to die tonight. But if I put blood on my door, the Egyptians are going to know I'm a revolutionary. And Fiona says, well, I don't want to do that. I mean, that's kind of scary. If he's wrong, we're stumped. They might not have used that particular expression.
Not exactly.
Probably not Yiddish, but so the actions, and this is part of what we need to see with the plagues and with the passing over. It's not the it's all fire is now 5 acres.
Yes. From the auto fire. Yeah.
So in 15 minutes,
Yes.
within 15 minutes, it's moved from 1 to 5 acres. That's not good. So is that close to Camarillo? The tour is not that close to Camarillo.
No, it's
It's
north.
no, I'm just trying to think where Mushkin lives. That's why.
This is north of Oxmoor.
Right. No, I'm trying to think. Okay. So if our law, this is one of the things we learn from this part of the book of Shemot. The laws, the miracles, they're for us. They're not for that. God doesn't need them. God could have softened Pharaoh's heart, and Pharaoh's heart would have been open and say, go have a nice day, goodbye. But this was because they had become indoctrinated. They had become assimilated. And this is and we're going to find this throughout the rest of our history. When we assimilate, it never works out well. Because we're not supposed to. We're supposed to be neighbors, but we're not supposed to assimilate. And it's easy to assimilate, isn't it? Right? It's easy. And it's a slippery, slippery slope. And it's easy to do that. And our job is not to do that. Our job is to hold a certain vibration, a certain tone, a certain space, and be lighted to the people. Okay? So we have this Passover that happens. Right? And then we get to this big moment of the parting of the Sea of Reeds. Okay? And by the way, I want to just back up when we talk about Pua and Shifra, the 2 midwives. Okay. We are taught that, and this is said in every traditional Haggadah, it is because of the women that we were set free. This is especially good for my teenage boys. Okay. It is because of the women, because Pua and Shifra saved our people. Okay, we can talk about Moses all day. It's Pua and Shifra who saved our people. And we get to the parting of the Sea of Reeds. And what happens at this point? The Jews start to really, they already did it a certain amount in Egypt, but now they're really perfecting the art of whining. They become extremely good at whining. You brought us here to the desert, the Sea of Reeds, to die. We couldn't have died where it was comfortable in Egypt. We got to die here. And they fight Moses all the time. I just did a Torah commentary for, I guess it's next week's Jewish Journal, about, the people could not release their chains of bondage when Moses spoke to them. They couldn't let go and trust what he was teaching. This happens constantly. It's so painful. And they get to the Sea of Reeds and everyone's whining. And there's no cheese. And they're whining. And then a guy named Nachshon of the tribe of Benjamin walks into the sea till the water is right above his lips and below his nose at sunset, and the wind starts to blow. And in the morning, depending on which midrash you read, there's a big sandbar, there's 12 sandbars, one for each tribe, there's 600,000 sandbars, one for everybody. Okay. And everyone goes across, and when Pharaoh tries to come across, Pharaoh drowns. Now, if there's sandbars, their carriages sink into the water. If the water's gone up, Allah ceases to build the mill, the water comes back down. But in whatever way it was, Pharaoh's soldiers die. And the people start to rejoice. And this is one of the two most important teachings, I think, for our time right now. When Pharaoh's soldiers are drowned, the angels start to rejoice. And God says, the work of my hands is being created, is being destroyed, and you want to sing songs of praise. You want to sing hymns. We do not rejoice at our enemy's defeat. Okay. We need to destroy Amalek. That is a commandment. We'll study a little bit. But we should never rejoice when that happens. We need to destroy Hamas. But God forbid we cheer on when we kill them. There's no joy in it. And I feel like from October 7th to December 7th, I was trying to remind people that we don't rejoice. That yes, they do need to be destroyed, but we don't rejoice. And from December 7th to now, the last 13 months, it's been, yes, but we do need to destroy that which is evil. And both are true. So part of the Sea of Reeds is that. And what does anyone know what happens at the Sea of Reeds when the sea parts? We have one of the oldest portions linguistically in the Bible. It's called the Song of the Sea. And Miriam and the women pick up their timbrels and they sing and they dance. We will find it in Shema 15:1. So chapter 15, verse 1. And it says very, very clearly, Moses and the children of Israel chose to sing this song to Hashem, and they said the following. Now, how many of you ever actually looked at a Torah? I mean, really, really looked at it. Okay. So when you really look at it, there's no page numbers, there's no chapter numbers, there's no verse numbers. So how does the rabbi or the cantor or the Baal Kriya know where the heck to find the parsha? You ever wonder about that?
Yeah.
Okay. There's no page numbers. So between each of these books, there's a big space. But there's certain other markers. This is one of them. Because the way it looks in this book is how it actually looks. The way that it looks right here. So you guys we all have art school, so you can just look and see how the Hebrew looks. It's spaced out, and it's this weird calligraphy. And yeah, so when you see it, I know that's where I am in the book of Shemot. When you see the Ten Commandments, it's like, I know that's where I am. So they're markers like that make it a little easier. And Miriam and the women sing this song, and the sea is parted and they move on. Remember I said one of the two most important teachings for our time right now in January of 2025. One is we don't rejoice at the defeat or the destruction of our enemy. Because our goal in war is victory. Our goal is peace, not victory. Would someone please turn to Shemot, or the book of Exodus, chapter 17, verse 1, and please read. Whoever has eyes good enough to read that. So we're going to go over two things here. Who wants to read? Go ahead. Somebody.
Start here and go around.
There you go. That works perfectly.
The entire assembly of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin to their journeys, according to the word of Hashem. They encamped in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. The people contended with Moses, and they said, "Give us water that we may drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you contend with me? Why do you test Hashem? The people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses, and it said, what is this that you have brought us up from Egypt to kill me and my children and my livestock through thirst?
Again, whining. So they haven't gotten to guilt yet. They're really good at the whining part right now. Go ahead, please continue.
Moses cried out to Hashem, saying, what shall I do for this people? A bit more and they will stone me. Hashem said to Moses, pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel, and in your hand take your staff with which you struck the river, and go. Behold, I shall stand before you by the rock in Horeb. You shall strike the rock, and water will come forth from it, and the people will drink. Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massa Meribah, because of the contention of the children of Israel, and because of their test of Hashem, saying, is Hashem among us or not?
Okay, so this is an incident where God says what to do, and he does it regarding water. Now, later on, we're going to have another incident where God says, people are whining for thirst, and what happens?
He doesn't do it.
What does he do?
He says, I did it.
Moses, God says, go strike the rock. Go talk to the rock, he'll make it overflow with water. And Moses goes and he does it. And what you probably learned at some point was that the children of Israel, were forced to abandon because he struck the rock instead of, right? That's not the case.
You need tuition money back, right? You're right.
Golf course is going to stop it. Okay, great. Golf course is going to be. So that's what you're right. You're taught that when the time comes, right? He's gonna be told to talk to the rock, and he's going to strike it not once but twice. And as a result, that's why he's not allowed to go into it. When we get to that verse, what it actually says is God tells them to do it, and Moses and Aaron and Moses, they say, shall we make water come forth from this rock? Not shall God make water. And do you see the difference?
Yeah.
It's not, because one portrays God as being angry,
Right.
right? God's angry. You didn't do exactly what I told you. I'm going to punish you. You can't go to Israel. The other is the realization that, okay, you should know better. We know you know better because right here you did it right. And moreover, we don't want you setting yourself up as an idol, because one of the things we never want is for people to say Moses and idolize Moses. If we knew where Moses was buried, this would be the biggest shrine on the planet, wouldn't it? Right? Mm-hmm. So I say that just because there's a comparison of what's going to happen. The next piece is the piece that the very next sentence starts what is so important in today's world. I think it's your turn. We are in chapter 15, verse 8 or 9. 8.
Amalek came and battled Israel and Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, choose people for us and go to battle with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. Joshua did as Moses said to him to do battle with Amalek, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur ascended to the top of the hill. It happened that when Moses raised his hand, Israel was stronger, and when he lowered his hand, Amalek was stronger. Moses' hands grew heavy, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on this side and one on that side, and he remained with his hands in faithful prayer until sunset. Joshua weakened Amalek and its people with the sword's blade.
Okay, so Amalek, first of all, how do we beat Amalek?
God.
But God always does it, right? God is our ally, our defender. But it's our realization of God. So think about it, right? They take Moses. They put Moses up on a rock, right? And they take Moses, and every time his hands are here, you guys, the soldiers with Joshua, and when the hands are up here, what are you looking at? The heavens, way up here, right? Oh, well, like this, you're looking back down. Our ally is not the Iron Dome. That is a tool, but the ally is God. When the people of Israel are looking up at God, looking up, you know what? I'm working with him. They win. When they look down, I'm doing the work myself, they lose. As long as we, and this is throughout our history again, as long as we, and whenever we remember and are conscious of our partnership with God, in that moment we succeed. It is when we lose that faith, when we don't have that partnership, when we think we're the ones doing it all. That's when bad things happen. Okay? So now read the next paragraph, because this is a really important teaching. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hashem said to Moses, "Write this as a remembrance in the book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, and I shall surely erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens." Moses built an altar and called its name Hashem is my miracle. And he said, "For the hand is on the throne of God. Hashem maintains a war against Amalek from generation to generation."
I will blot out the name of Amalek. I will be at war with him from generation to generation forever. God is a forgiving God. Nowhere do you find anger, rage, fear in the Torah. My mom says, if you do, it's you, it's not the book. So what is this about? God forgives everybody, doesn't he? David has sex with a married woman, sends her husband off to die. God forgives him. Right? One after another of all of the role models here. One of the things I love about Judaism, one of the reasons I could not be a Christian. Jesus is perfect. I can't relate to that. I can relate to men who try to do better than they do. I can relate to human beings who try to do the best they can and have foibles and screw up. Abraham as Hagar and Ishmael, right? And they're all human. They make mistakes. I can relate to that. And some of them make pretty darn big mistakes. But they're all forgiven. With one exception. The whole book. One guy is not forgiven. Amalek. And not only is he not forgiven, all of his descendants aren't forgiven. I will be at battle with Amalek from generation to generation. I will blot out his remembrance. Now understand how big this is. Okay? Later on, when Saul becomes king, he loses his kingship because he doesn't kill the Amalekite animals. That's because we're supposed to blot out everything from Amalek. Now, why? Well, one of the reasons is because the owner's got this good-looking goat, and it says, "It's a good-looking goat. Where'd you get it from?" And it says, "Well, when we conquered Amalek." It says, "Who's Amalek?" And that keeps Amalek's memory. Oh, he's whoever he was. Maybe he wasn't so bad. He raised good goats. What did Amalek do? I just realized I picked a marker that matches my sweatshirt. Tell Alison I was unconsciously color coordinated. What did Amalek do? Amalek attacked the people, okay, the Hebrews, from behind. Who was at the back of the camp? The weak, the women, the children, the old, the infirm. And that's a perpetrator who victimizes. Okay? You cannot negotiate with a perpetrator like that. Okay? You cannot negotiate. So my friend and teacher, Rabbi Shochet, wrote an amazing book called Amalek, the Enemy Within. And it's the whole idea that Amalek can also and should also be looked at as inner qualities. The perpetrator inside ourselves. The addiction. Someone's an addict. Someone's an alcoholic. Can they have one drink? It has to be destroyed and cut out, doesn't it? If someone is a sex abuser, a pedophile, God forbid, whatever form of addiction, a heroin addict, they can't have a little taste, can they? It's to be destroyed. You don't negotiate with it. So on the one hand, that's our inner Amalek. Does that make sense? Cancer is Amalek. What do you do to cancer? Someone, God forbid, has cancer.
Cut it out.
You
You kill it.
You kill all of it. You can't leave one little cell, can you? Can't have one little drink or one little snort or whatever, right? That's all the Amalek without. The Amalek without is that when someone or some organization chooses to be a perpetrator upon the weak, that is to be destroyed. We are to physically destroy that.
Can we, I have a feeling though, other ideas that Amalek really is more than a human being. It's the evil within a human being or evil itself.
So that's an interesting question, because now we get to, remember we talked about the idea that sin sits at the doorway, beckons you to enter. That's a choice, right? And there is evil. But whether someone is, whatever caused them to do that evil action, to do that Amalek action, they're Amalek. Okay. And,
Referring to the person that's in it.
right. So, I mean, let's be honest. Hamas is Amalek.
Yeah.
And it must be destroyed, not defeated. Let's also be honest. Most of the people who performed most of the horrors on October 7th, 2023, never had a chance. From the time they were being indoctrinated. Kill the Jew. They don't feel pain the same way, do they're not human, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, but the worst thing to say is, well, they didn't mean it. It's not their fault. You can't. Yeah,
no, but wait.
Doesn't matter.
But I'm willing to say it's not their fault. They never had a chance.
But they still need to be destroyed.
They still need to be destroyed, and I still need to cry about it.
Yeah.
Because the moment I stop crying is the moment I've lost who I am.
And that's why we really can't rejoice, because there's that little bit that they never had a chance anyhow.
Even if they did have a chance, it doesn't matter. We never rejoice that our enemies defeat, and so every night, typically 12, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, I'm up writing emails.
Yep.
What, over 600 of them at this point in Orlando, something like that? And poor Orlando gets up in the morning, first thing he sees whenever he went to bed, okay, I got to forward this to the
Yeah, but I
rabbi.
save them. I've got no memory left in my phone.
Well, they're supposed to be published, so God willing, they will be as an ebook. So people have that. So I do that for a number of reasons. I do it because I think every rabbi should be doing it at least once a week and send me their temple. Unfortunately, no one's doing it. So I feel compelled to do it. That's one reason. One reason is because I feel there needs to be a testament. There needs to be, this is what we've been going through. Because another part of the reason is, it is so painful and so horrific that it is hard for us to keep it in our consciousness. It's very hard to keep that in our consciousness. And so we blot it out of our memory. So instead of blotting out Amalek, we blot it out so we don't remember. We don't have the emotional reactions. Do you guys remember how you felt October 7th and 8th?
Awful.
And how people have just sort of, that's all that was in every Jew's consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was, let's just sing Kumbaya. So part of it is to keep people conscious of it. If you're Orthodox, every morning you're davening together, right? You're davening every morning, you're having shachris, and you say, you hear what happened in the news last night in Israel, and it's in dialogue. But if you're not davening every single morning, it is not in your consciousness. By going to temple, it's not in your consciousness. By doing whatever. Remember, we have rabbis for Palestine. We have a temple, large temple, that covered up the faces of the hostage victims because they didn't want to offend the Muslims they were renting space to. We have my personal favorite organization, although it is small, but it does exist, Queer Rabbis for Palestine. It's just like, okay, you're gay, you're Jewish, you're a rabbi. They're just going to keep cutting off your head and sewing it back on if you go over there. Okay, so you can cut it off again. So I think it's important that that's kept in people's consciousness. So that's another reason. And another reason is a personal reason. I don't want to forget, and I don't want to become desensitized. Because if I do, I've lost my own soul. I've lost who I am if I stop caring that even Sinwar, was killed. I'm grateful Sinwar is dead. I'm grateful Nasrallah is dead. I do not rejoice in their death. I would rather they had changed their minds, changed their hearts, and God had softened their hearts, and they'd come and say, you know what? The Quran's wrong, and we should be actually trying to think about being at peace with these people. They make better fruit houses and greenhouses, and why are we doing this? We can all live together happy and healthy and peaceful and prosperous. I would much rather that than have them killed. So that's the other reason, is keep my own humanity, my own sense of
And
self.
all of these people are forgetting what it just said. You will kill Amalek.
It's more than kill. You will blot it out of existence. You will blot out its memory.
Right. These people are forgetting that one. Rabbi from Palestine.
But go take a look at pick through a former conservative congregation. So I think it's really, really important. And so Amalek needs to be destroyed, both the Amalek within and the Amalek without. That part of ourselves that's a perpetrator. Okay. So we go to a hotel, and they don't, because they've been raised not to. They understand why, but you go to a hotel, and the kid wants to say, well, can't I just take the towel with me? Okay? That's theft. And when someone says, oh, no, it's built into the cost of the hotel room. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It doesn't change the fact that it's theft. Okay? It's stealing. It's not yours. You pay for it. Okay? You want to go pay for it? Go pay for it. Okay? My kids learned that when they were very little. We were in Florida, in Arizona. One of them got very sick when we were about to drive back home. So we took towels with us. We told the front desk, we're going to be taking these back, and we're going to be mailing them back to you. And we did, obviously, because they're not our towels, right? Okay. But if you accept that it's your towels, right? They've built so that it's your towels. And this isn't like the shampoos, which are disposable things, right? The towels are theirs. They reuse them. They wash them. If you move it to towels, well, then you've rationalized theft, and that leads to more and more and more, doesn't it? So ours is about action. We don't do that. We don't surrender to that perpetrator that says, hey, it's okay. Just have that little drink, that little snort. Take that towel. Okay? It doesn't matter that you're married. Those two girls like you, Ed. Go be with them.
What? I was busy. What did you say?
I said it doesn't matter. I said it doesn't matter, Ed, if you're married. Those two girls like you. Go be with them. Right. So it's we take it off the table, right? When I taught at Loyola, I was the one professor who didn't get flirted with my students, because the first week of class I always brought Allison in. They saw I was in love with a beautiful woman. So I really, except for once, one young woman did want to do it. And I always took our meetings. I never took meetings in my office. I always took them in the coffee bar at the Lion's Den. But there was one student, she was a senior. First couple of weeks of class, she would sit in the front row in a very short skirt and high heels with nothing underneath. Yes, I'm sure there was nothing underneath, because no one had ever taught her to cross her legs. And about 3 weeks into the class, I get this email, Rabbi, I need to get an A in your class. I will do anything to get an A. When can we talk privately about this? I need to get an A. To which I did two things. First thing is I immediately showed it to all of my friends, so I would never be tempted. Okay. Number two, I emailed back and said, you can do well on your exams and your final paper. Ironically, she got an A because she did good work. But what she never came back in class dressed like that again. She always is wearing sweats and stuff from then on. I don't understand it. So Judaism is about you take that off the table. You don't negotiate with Amalek. We all have Amaleks within. That's part of being human. You don't negotiate with it. You don't go down that slippery slope. Orlando loves the story of the Persian wedding, I think. So have you been to a Persian wedding? So in the Persian community, often if you're 30 years old and single, you're an old woman, you're an old maid. So these girls are coming in their 20s, and they all could be runway models, and they're dressed in very little fabric and high heels. And Alice and I are at a wedding, and there's this young woman walking towards us, and I am not going to turn my head no matter what, because no one wants to see the rabbi go like this. She was long dark hair, micro mini dress that was lace with nothing underneath. Yes, I'm sure there was nothing underneath this lace mini micro dress. And as she's walking, I'm not going to look at anything because Allison goes, "Oh my God." Okay, you don't surrender to those kind of things. We destroy it. We block it out. We any of those things are Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination. We completely reject and put a fence around so we don't have it. Everyone has an Amalek within, and there are Amaleks without, and they are doing evil. Evil that cannot be redeemed. There is no redemption for what they did on October 7th. Okay, and all of these idiots at the Golden Globe Awards wearing pins with red hands. As far as I'm concerned, they can go be with them. Because do you guys know what the red hands are?
Yeah.
Okay, red hands has become a symbol for Hamas in Palestine and all these poor abused people. Red hands actually come from a number of years ago, where these guys had kidnapped 2 Israelis, strung them and beaten them and pummeled them until they were dead, and then put their bloody hands on the window. The guys who had beaten them up put their hands on the windows, and the crowd below was screaming in exultation. That's where the red hands come from. That Guy Pearce and these idiots are wearing.
Do you think most of them don't even know that?
You know what? Whether they do or not,
It's awful. Yeah.
Well, what about, I mean.
and when you're wearing
yes,
something you don't know what it means.
Yes, this is Hamas, but the next day Hezbollah started throwing rockets on innocent people too.
There's a qualitative difference between what Hamas did. If you would have said on October 6th, I would, what should we do with Hamas? I would say, whatever we can to have a lasting peace. October 7th, they need to be destroyed. Okay, it's many enemies can become friends. Someone who does that cannot.
No.
They can't. And it's not a political statement, it's a theological statement. Does that make sense to everyone? So that's the story of Amalek. Okay, now we get to chapter 19. So they get to Sinai. They get to this mountain to prepare for the Torah. And the people, there's a wonderful line that it's going to say that the people heard the lightning and saw the thunder. Okay, kind of weird. That's actually what the Hebrew says. And the idea is, who knows what synesthesia is? Is anyone familiar with synesthesia? Synesthesia is the idea of what babies have naturally, and some people keep it all their lives. Our senses do not naturally separate. They are naturally synesthesic. Okay? And we've separated them so we can function in the physical world. So if someone is either in deep meditation or takes a psychotropic substance, whatever, they'll talk about seeing the music, the colors from the music, right? Because the synapses, the pathways in the brain that have been closed as we've gotten older have opened up the way they are with the baby. Okay. And that some people keep it all their lives, and some people learn to study so they can do it and gain it again. And we all use it in language. We all mix metaphors of language when we're talking about joys and senses. It sounds delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Delicious, technically, is from taste, not from hearing. That's a synesthetic statement that we all naturally say. Does that make when I say it that way? So the people are in a synesthetic state. They prepare, and then you have the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments are, oh, you're going to love this because of how you learned this.
Hold on,
So-
let me get my pen out.
You probably should. So the 10 Commandments, first of all, are not 10 sentences. They're 13 sentences. Now, why is that important? Because we go back, first we were talking about gematria, the numerical value equaling of a word equaling something. The word ahava, which means love, has the numerical value of 13. These 13 statements, 13 sentences as 10 statements are, that's why they're always split. This, sometimes they say this is where commandment 1 ends, and sometimes the Bible says this is commandment 2 or this is commandment 3, and they're all, it's because it's not split like that. These are the love commitments. This is the ketubah between the Jewish people and God. Okay. On Pesach, on Passover, we get betrothed to God. You are my chosen, I am for you, you are for me. At Shavuot, which is when the 10 Commandments are given, we get married. And this entire book, as well as all of our teachings, is the lengthy version of the ketubah, and these statements are the ketubah. So, let's talk about love. Let's be honest, I always wanted to be the Jewish Barry White. So, a guy and a girl meet each other, right? Remember when you met Sandy?
Hmm?
Where'd you guys meet?
Synagogue.
Okay. And first time you're having a conversation, what's the first words you guys said to each other?
Hello. Probably.
Hello, and then probably was right after that.
Nice to meet you.
My name is.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Very quickly you have this is what I do. I go to school, I've done this, right? And then you start going out and you have relationship agreements. This is okay, this is not okay.
Right.
Let's look at these statements from a very different perspective. Okay? So we come to, this is chapter 20. What's the timing of this? What about a little more? Anochi Adonai, Anochi Yud He Vav He, God's sacred name that we talked about the first week, right? I am this, your Yud He Vav He, your God. I am personal name. This is chapter 20, verse 1. This is, hi, I'm Michael. Okay? What do? I'm the one who took you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery. Just like a relationship. I do this, I do that. Now there's this great other line. It says, you shall not recognize the gods of others in my presence. Horrible translation. Some translations say, you shall not have any other gods before me. Horrible translation. Who speaks? Any of you speak Hebrew? Translate Hebrew? Okay. Just a word at a time. And let's see what it actually says. Because that's what it's always translated, there are no other gods in your presence, you shall have no other gods before me, etc. Right? That's
Yes.
okay. But let's look at the Hebrew, because lo yihye lecha, there shall not be for you Elohim acharim, other gods, al panai. What's a punim? Come on, face. Punim's a face. You shall have no other gods on your face. That's literally what it says. What does that mean? A couple comes into the room. Okay? Crowded room. They can be at a party, whatever it may be. And if they are in love, you see it on their face, don't you? They can be across the room, but they're still always checking each other out. Right? Couple comes in, doesn't matter how long they've been together, not been together. Doesn't matter if they're right next to each other. You can see it on their face if things aren't good, can't you? When the husband is going, right, to the blonde over here, it's on his face, isn't it? So what is God saying? We're intimate. You'll have no other gods. It's not before me. It's not in my presence. On the face. It's a whole different understanding, isn't it?
So don't look at someone else.
Not it's the idea that you and I, God is saying, you and I, we're together. This is our marriage contract. Okay, I'm for you, you're for me. And yeah, we got other sorts of relationships, but you know what? On your face, nothing else. I'm not gonna. That's it, right? And then it says you shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which you're not gonna have substitutes. You're not gonna have any mistresses. No mistresses allowed. Tell Stan that, will you please? Just let him know. Rabbi, go home. Stan, the rabbi said no mistresses. So, and then it goes on, and it says that all these things that you cannot do, right? Your relationship agreements, what you can and can't do. Don't steal, don't cheat, don't commit adultery, don't do all these things. Don't murder. By the way, it says these are very specific versions of the verbs. It does not say you shall not kill. It says do not murder. It does not say you shall not steal. It's do not steal in the dark in a hidden way. Very different. Les Mis is not what the guy does to steal for bread. All he stole was a loaf of bread for his family to eat. Is not the same as someone who sneaks into the house that has been evacuated.
Well, it says in the dark.
It's Ganab is. I'm sorry, what?
You saying it's okay to steal?
No, but it's not being. No kind of stealing is allowed. But these 10 commandments, these last ones, if you look in the Hebrew on the right hand side of the page, it's just low, low, low. Ganov is the type of theft that's done in the dark. They're all of the last 5 are prohibitions against doing bad things in hiding, in secret. It does not mean you can do them in front, but they're all things that are done in secret, in the dark. Okay. Okay. You don't commit adultery. You don't covet. I love that word. Just no. I really, it's a great Scrabble word. It uses C and V and something other than voice. So it's a great Scrabble word. But it's don't covet, because that's inside you, isn't it? It's secret. Because there are no secrets. So there are all these rules. It says here to remember the Sabbath day. Okay, 6 days shall you accomplish all your work. On the 7th day of the Sabbath, etc. For 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is there, and He rested on the 7th day. Therefore Hashem blessed the 7th day and sanctified it. So so this is again repeated later on in the book of Deuteronomy. And it says it a little bit differently, but it says instead of remember, it says you shall shomer, you shall safeguard, you shall protect. So one case it says remember, one case it says guard. So what does that mean? We have 2 candles for Shabbat. And it says, what do we say in the Charari? Shamor v'zachor beribur echad. To protect it and to remember are in essence the same in one thing. So that's, there's some subtle differences. But this is the main piece of the highlights of this big document, which is all the ketubah, the love contract, the wedding contract between God and the Jewish people.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I thought I saw earlier that you're not supposed to make an image of the heavens, right? Did I read that?
Mhm.
Does that mean you can't make a model of the moon?
No, it's the heavens, the spiritual heavens.
Oh, the spiritual. Okay.
And although there are people who will not have any art in their home, and traditionally most synagogues, most Orthodox synagogues, do not have any imagery in the shul itself. If you go into Wilshire Laura Temple, it's very different. If you've ever been in Wilshire Laura Temple with the dome, spectacular. But traditionally, you will have things like we have, if you will, it is no dream.
Yeah.
You'll have things like that. You won't have this spectacular painting of whatever else. Typically, you won't have that in an Orthodox shul. In form of conservative, you'll have stained glass. You'll have other things that picked up, but
It's not Chagall somewhere.
the Chagall windows.
I apologize. I must leave because our power is out and my neighbor has offered.
Hey, good. Okay.
My neighbor's offered his freezer that's connected to a generator. from all my food and all that stuff.
Isn't more and more people have generators? Have you noticed that?
He went out and bought it today, a used generator.
You can't have art? Is that what it's saying?
It's interpreted a lot of different ways, but many people over the centuries have interpreted it that you do not have art because it's false images of that which is real.
Even within your house?
There are a lot of those who do, yeah. The Orthodox, yeah.
It's not just in Judaism, though.
I don't. Well, it's not in Christianity has imagery.
Well,
Yeah.
some like Seventh Day Adventists,
Good
I
luck.
think, they won't. I mean, I've had kids. I had a friend that was a teacher. I think it was Seventh Day Adventist, and they were making like something for Christmas, right? In regular school, not
Right.
religious school. And the kid would paint the pine cone, but they wouldn't put glitter on it or something. It was like this really like weird stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know the
So
theology
what's
of all.
on the walls?
Look what we have on our walls. Just take a look. You know,
There'll be words.
The flag, words.
They're not those kind of images.
Definitely not the system.
No, it doesn't. Look, there's no. Again, it's different. We have lots of art on our walls. Okay, so it depends on totally what you're doing. But the idea that and what is that art?
You don't idolize it.
You don't idolize them. They're not idols. They're not images of God. They're not. I mean, we have. We've art that is Judaica. So Jewish art often has menorahs or stars of the shield of David, things like that. Imagery that is not idolized. It's not like having an icon, which the church has, with the saints and all that. It's not like having relics or having big crosses that you pray to. Okay, so I want to get through a little bit more. So if we get to chapter 23, we have this teaching about the 3 festivals that you shall go to Jerusalem. You will make a pilgrimage for. They are Passover, Sukkot, and Shavuot. And then we have this great line that says about mixing milk and meat. This here somewhere, and here we go. You shall not cook you shall not cook a kid in the milk of its mother. Chapter verse 19. It's a great rabbi joke that if there is such a thing. I heard a great rabbi joke. A priest, a minister, and a rabbit. And a rabbit walk into a bar.
Yeah.
The bar looks at the priest, looks at the minister, looks at the rabbit, and the rabbit says, I think I'm a typo.
Yeah. I'm only here because of spell check.
There's no T.
Oh.
And then the other one that I heard was from Sal Lidvack. This, which is, I saw it coming, the kids didn't. That had a panel discussion, a priest and a Uman and a rabbi. What do you want said at your funeral? Have you heard this? And the Uman says, well, I really want it to be said that I really served my community well. And the priest gets there and says, at my funeral, I want people to say that I invited everyone to be part of the church. And the rabbi says, my funeral, I want people to say, look, he's moving. Which is, so you shall not, it says, you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk.
And so now that means you have to wait 6
Well, so the story is that God says, Moses, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. And Moses says, so I can't have milk and I can't have the milk from a mother and actually have her goat in the same ever. I can't eat the same. I can't have, if I have the milk, I can't have the goat. Moses, don't mix a milk. Don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. So I can't have any milk or any meat at the same time. Moses, don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. So I can't have milk and meat within 6 hours of each other. Fine, Moses, have it your way. Okay. The actual law is you cannot have it at the same meal. So in Sweden, that means every 2 hours. In Germany, that meant every 6 hours. Okay. But why? Why can't we have milk and meat at the same time?
Cruel to the mother to see.
There's a cruelty level to the mother. Okay. What if the mother doesn't see it? If I'm boiling her calf in her milk, if I'm making a stew with milk and and meat with meat and cheese, why can't I have a cheeseburger? Okay? Judaism is about distinction. We say the Ma'ariv prayer all the time, look between the holy and the holy. Things aren't necessarily meant to be mixed together. In fact, you know what it's called when we mix the wrong things together? Like when we mix the wrong fabrics together? It's called shatnaz. Okay. If you take the word shatnaz, you guys have heard that before? It's mixing the wrong fabrics with each other, mixing the wrong foods together. If you take the word shatnaz and you rearrange the letters, it spells Osasatan, the strength of Satan. Isn't that interesting? Milk is the primary sign of new life. Meat is the primary sign of new death. Milk makes birth and death. It's just that simple. Meat's fine. Milk's fine. But not together. Okay? And so that's a piece
So
that's here.
how come that doesn't apply to chicken and egg?
Because the egg is not the byproduct of the chicken in terms of being nurtured. Right? I mean, the calf feeds on the milk. The calf feeds on the mother's milk. I mean, the milk is the new. It's not that the calf is a fetus. Caviar is not treif. Unless it's from a treif fish. The caviar itself is not treif. That's why. Does that make sense? The baby chick is not feeding on an egg. The baby cow is feeding on milk.
Right, I get that.
Okay, so it's not.
But when you said life and death,
Slice a new life and new death. It's
I mean,
the
the
symbols.
chicken is definitely, I mean, the egg is definitely.
Is the potential egg is potential for life, but it's not new life yet. But that also brings up another question when we get to milk and meat. So basar v'chalav, meat and milk. And everything is there are three types of food, right? There's meat, leshik, there's milk, and then there's parv, which is neutral. Okay? So salmon is parv. Why? Because it's a neutral food. It doesn't give milk to its baby fish when the baby fish hatch. Right? I don't care how hard you try, you can't milk the chicken. What was that Robert De Niro line with the Adam Sandler movie? I have nipples, can't milk me, right? Okay, so you can't milk chicken. Chicken should be neutral.
It was.
It was. And you know why? Why it stopped?
You don't want me to tell you.
No, why do you think it stopped?
Some stupid man. I mean, if you want
That
to
was
ask me
redundant.
about most of the laws of kosher.
Okay, well, we're going to get through that, and I'm going to show you that kashrut is actually brilliant law.
The law itself, but especially when you start dealing with Passover.
Oh, whole other world. Okay, there are 5 grains forbidden. Sephardim are right. Okay, the reason the chicken became considered meat is because we have this concept that you build a fence around the Torah to protect Jews from making a mistake. Okay, so it's like having a fence around your pool. And 1,000 years ago, the rabbis, or longer, realized, because how did you cook meat back then? An open flame. They were concerned that a Jew would think he was eating burnt chicken when he was really eating burnt cow. They had shawarma back then too. So when he was really eating burnt cow, and so he would make the mistake of having it. And so to protect the person from making the mistake, that's why chicken became considered neutral.
Okay, my take on that is it's because a man thought a woman couldn't tell the difference. And that's the same reason that they tell you, if you go back in our tradition, right, why you can't eat peanuts during Passover and you can still cook in peanut oil.
Yeah. Well,
Like, tell me that makes sense.
Okay, who says that to you?
Who says what?
That you can't cook in peanuts, that you can't eat peanuts, and you can cook in peanut oil.
Because this is what the rabbis were saying.
No. So let's back up from it because there are differences here. You had throughout history, as often happens with humanity, you get jackasses in every profession. Personally, I think they are a higher percentage in clergy than most other professions, including politics. Okay? And what happened is, because we get influenced by the cultures we are around, most Jews that you know are Ashkenazi. They come from Eastern Europe. They come from Europe. This is their background, however many centuries ago. And so if you go from the 16th to the 19th, 20th century, the Jews of that era aspire to assimilate and be like their non-Jewish successful brethren. So when a Chabad guy says to me, I say, why are you dressed like that? This is the traditional clothes of our ancestors. You're full of it. Our traditional clothes are a turban and a kaftan in white, not a shtreimel and a black jacket. You are out of your mind. You're wearing the clothes of the 17th, 18th, 16th, 19th century middle to upper middle class noblemen who were Catholics. That's what you're wearing. Now, I'm okay with you wearing whatever you want, but don't tell me that's my traditional clothes. Okay? In Judaism, everything pretty much in the physical world that is sacred is a feminine word. Torah, Shabbat, Mezuzah. Pick the word. They're feminine. Because we believe that the presence of God in the physical world is feminine, Shekhinah. Why do we believe that? A number of reasons. Feminine is receptive. But beyond that, because every one of you, every month of your adult life, understands something on a cellular level that he and I will never get. You deal with the potential for birth and then death. And you deal with it every month of your adult life, which is why many indigenous cultures, for a man to be able to sit with a woman, he has to have pierced himself. He has to have done a Sundance or whatever it might be, because we don't have that innate understanding of potential for birth to death. Okay? And I don't care what we try to do, we are never going to have a child that comes out of our womb. Ain't going to happen. I really don't care what the political elites decide to say. It's not going to happen. Okay? Now let's look at Catholicism, which again, looking at those Ashkenazi Jews, that world of Europe was controlled by the Catholics. It's Catholic world. In our tradition are archetypes: Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, Miriam, Deborah, strong, powerful women. Who are the two archetypes in Catholicism?
Virgin Mary.
Virgin Mary and the prostitute Mary.
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene. Right.
So your two archetypes of woman in Catholicism is a virgin and a prostitute. So there's your wife, and then there's your mistress. You can do all the things with it you never do with your wife. Okay? And this becomes part of the culture. And so the woman, the role of the woman, it's a whole different archetype. But those Jews from that time period pick up the habits of the people around them. So the Talmud, it says a man's not allowed to walk behind a woman. Do you know that? It says that. Okay? And then it says why? He's going to be looking at her tzolchas, and he's not going to be thinking about what he should be thinking about. Okay? If I walk behind Allison, I am telling you that typically I am not thinking of anything but one thing. And it doesn't have a whole lot to do with Talmud, except very specific passages. Okay? And we've been married 20 years. So, but it doesn't say. So the idea is that a woman and a man should walk side by side, right? Can we all agree that that makes a lot of sense? Those same rabbis that you're talking about say the woman should walk where?
Behind him.
Doesn't say that. And then they'll quote the line from the Talmud, and they'll say, but the Talmud says a man should not walk behind a woman. You're right. But where does it say she should walk behind him? But they're too influenced by Catholic culture. I think, did I tell you guys the story about the tefillin that I did with the Persian woman? Why do I feel like I told that recently?
Last week.
I told that here last week. Okay. The Persian woman who, her son wanted wrapped tefillin. It was a demonstration for Israel. Went to a young rabbi. He said, can my rabbi wrap tefillin? Absolutely. finished. His mother, who's a very tough Persian woman, already past the age of menstruation, says, "Rabbi, I want a rabbit tefillin. You're my rabbi. You have to make me a rabbit tefillin. You have to." One other guy said, "Can we borrow your tefillin to wrap her?" Had he been smart, he would have said, "I'm not comfortable." End of conversation. This Shmendrik says, "Women are forbidden. Will you tell me where?" It says they're forbidden. Okay, where? It says they are. Okay, I'm not saying I know anything. Tell me where. My rabbi taught me. Fine, I'll buy you and your wife and the rabbi and his wife dinner at Pat's if you can show me where it says that. Because it doesn't. So that kind of misogyny isn't Jewish. That's my point. It's not Jewish.
Right.
It is how Jews practice it, how many Jews practice it, but it's not Jewish. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there's a qualitative difference between those kind of things. And you really see in the Sephardic world, which is much more affiliated with traditional Judaism, back going to biblical, because you had a community that went in the 6th century before the Common Era to Babylon. They stayed there till the 1970s. So they really do have a very, much more. Can you imagine a Persian woman cutting her hair and wearing a wig?
No.
Okay. Why is that? Oh, because she's not supposed to be attractive to other men. And why is that?
But wait, after they cut their hair, right? Then they buy these amazing
Expensive wigs. Now they do, but that's not what it was.
Right, I know. But if you want to talk about the way it's practiced now, it's kind of ridiculous.
It's hypocritical and it's wrong and on every level. Okay. The Orlando will know who I'm talking about, but the cantor who says, I'm too holy to touch anything on Shabbos or a festival, except when he doesn't like the way he sounds, will jump. He can't touch a mic because it's electrical on Shabbos. But so he has to, mics all have to be set for him. But then he doesn't like the way it sounds, so he runs down to the soundboard and starts mixing it. Okay, it's BS. But that's not Judaism. That's why we're studying all this too. Okay, is because it's not. Just because people say that it is doesn't mean it's true. Okay, and this someone says that's Jewish. It doesn't mean they're right. And it's always worth saying, where does it come from? So the idea of chicken being considered meat was done very consonant with the practice of protect the Jews from being idiots, not from women. It had nothing to do with women. It had to do with all Jews thinking that a burnt piece of chicken, they might think they're eating chicken, they might be eating burnt cow instead. Okay, so it was created an difference. I have a friend who keeps kosher. With one glaring exception, he will have chicken parmesan whenever he can. As he says, I'm smart. I don't hear about the rabbis. I'm smart enough to tell between a dead cow and a dead chicken. All right. So that's what he does. And that's discussion. Okay.
Makes sense to me.
I have.
And I have a kosher house. Right?
It's.
Why do the other religions have women more subservient than Judaism? Like how you just said with the.
I didn't say Judaism doesn't try to make women subservient, but how many Jewish women have you met? No, they're not, and thank God. And actually, it's not. That just has to do with archetypes, and where we look at it in a different way. So, what ends up happening? And I'd like to get to this one piece, which we find. I really like to get this, so I don't think I'm going to. Yeah, I don't think I can do it. Okay, so we're going to get to the golden calf next time, but I think it's important to recognize that this is all for our purpose. Do you think God cares if I'm eating a cheeseburger?
Nope.
Probably not.
But it makes me be aware that life and death should be separated, potentially. Does God need me to think of these different laws if it makes me be more conscious as a human being? That's what these laws are for. The analogy is made that when the town crier would ride around the town, right, in the middle of the night, it's like 11 o'clock and all is well, 12 o'clock and all is well, 1 o'clock and all is well. He's saying that for whom? Everybody's asleep, so who's he saying it for? For himself, to keep himself awake. and aware. Our laws are to keep us awake and aware. To be conscious of the tension between, you know, I got to destroy Amalek and I got to mourn it. I got to be sad about it. I need to keep kosher, but I need to know why. I need to understand where the law comes from so I can observe it and it makes a difference in my life. I am intelligent enough and know enough history to know that the concept in today's world of keeping a chicken as meat and not as neutral is stupid. Okay? It is intellectually dishonest because no one pretty much today is going into the market and they're saying, oh, the ground beef and the ground chicken, and they look just like each other and they're the same exact price and they're not labeled. Okay? That's not happening. So it's ridiculous. So why do I do it? Because it's rabbinic law. It's not from UC9.
Right.
I do it because it connects me and reminds me of all the rabbis before me. Okay, that's why I do it. I do it because there's a connection. It makes me better. I'll leave you with this. You know, when we get to kosher animals, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But I grew up eating crab cakes. That's the family I grew up. My brother and I had crab cakes every Sunday. I was 12 years old. And the idea of not eating certain meats or certain foods was stupid to me, because and then you talk to a Reform rabbi who would say, well, but it's a cleanliness issue.
Oh.
So animals that are clean are kosher, animals that are dirty are not. It's like, that's a crock, because there's no dirtier animal on the planet than a chicken, and no cleaner animal on the planet than a raccoon, and he's not kosher and he is. Okay? Raccoons wash their hands before they eat. After they eat, they wash the food. If you've ever seen a raccoon in the wild, that's when I understood what it was really about. I said, we take this amount of time and try to only eat kosher meats and see if there's a change in my energy. There was. So that's a step at a time. That's how I became kosher. I think it's important for us to realize with milk and meat, with any of these practices, with all of this, just like going back to what we started with, the blood on the doorpost, it's for us to become better versions of ourselves. God doesn't need me not to eat a cheeseburger. God doesn't need blood on a door to know that it's a Jewish home. But it changes who we are. And that's why we do what we do. Okay, I think we'll end it for there. We're going to take next week off and then come back the week after. Worthwhile? Fun?